Archduke Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is sitting in his car with his wife Sophie, Duchess of Wodenberg. They have gone to see a part of their empire. Suddenly, an assassin came running. Standing on the footboard of the car, he was shot several times at point-blank range. Sophie collapsed in her husband's arms. The Archduke lost consciousness at the same time after receiving 2 bullets in his body. I was talking about a time that changed the history of the entire world. The First World War began as a result of this brutal murder. Then, the Great War ended with the blood of 85 million soldiers and 1,30 million civilians. But how did just 3 bullets turn the tide of the entire world? To know how just one murder led the entire world to a world war, you have to understand the political situation at that time. The main problem originated in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Bosnian Serbs lived in the Bosnia and Herzegovina region of Austria-Hungary. Their main goal was to separate from Austria-Hungary and form another Slavic state. And the neighboring country Serbia was adding fuel to this fire. So then, Archduke Ferdinand, the future emperor of Austria-Hungary, announced his visit to Sarajevo, the capital of that region. Then the rebels chose that as a golden opportunity. But the plan to assassinate him was actually planned by Colonel Dragutin Dmitri Zevic, the head of Serbian military intelligence. June 28th, 11 o'clock in the morning. On that day in 1914, no one could have imagined what was going to happen, but it was actually supposed to happen, because before Archduke Ferdinand arrived, the streets of the city through which his motorcade would pass were already printed in the newspapers. Numerous people were standing in line to welcome the Archduke, and there were 4 or 5 assassins inside. Although the first 2 did not get a chance to bomb, the third assassin, Sabrinovich, did. But his bomb hit the car and ricocheted off the back. Some officers in the car behind were injured by the bomb. The Archduke was shocked by this incident, but he should have fled immediately. But instead, he went to the town hall to give a speech. There he said, "I came here on a trip, and I was greeted with a bomb." Then the Archduke and his wife went to see the injured officers. On the way back, the Archduke's driver suddenly took the wrong road. Yes, the wrong road. And because of that small mistake, the history of the world changed. When the driver realized that he was on the wrong road, he braked, and just then there was another assassin. By sheer luck, he caught the Archduke in his arms and shot the Duke and his wife dead at point-blank range. Austria-Hungary was in a state of shock. Serbs were attacked all over the country. Austria-Hungary also blamed Serbia and demanded terrible things from them. But do you know what's funny? The Serbian Prime Minister himself informed Austria-Hungary about the murders in which Serbia was involved, because Prime Minister Nikola Pasic was a bitter enemy of Colonel Dragutin Dmitri Zevic. But because of his position, Prime Minister Nikola could not directly inform. His letter was so convoluted that the Archduke did not understand anything. But after the Archduke died, the entire blame was placed on Serbia. And to avoid meeting Austria-Hungary's impossible demands, they declared war on Serbia. But before Austria-Hungary declared war, they needed some backup, because if they attacked Serbia, there was every possibility that Russia would intervene. And if Russia attacked Austria-Hungary, there was a great danger. But when the German Emperor William II assured them of his support, Austria-Hungary attacked Serbia on July 28th, and that's where Russia gave up. Tsar Nicholas II of Russia considered it his moral duty to save a Slavic state like Serbia. When Russia began to partially prepare its troops, Germany declared war on Russia. But France had an agreement with Russia that would have Germany fighting both Russia and France at the same time. However, there was also such an agreement between France and Britain. When France first asked for Britain's help, Britain was not that interested, but Germany dragged a superpower like Britain into the war. How? German General Schlieffen's plan was to attack France first, because Russia was such a big country that it would take a long time for them to prepare for war. And in that time, Germany would occupy France with lightning speed and confront Russia with its full strength. That was Schlieffen's plan. But as part of this plan, it became necessary to transport German troops through Belgium. Why? Because there were numerous military installations along the entire French-German border, and fighting through that region and entering France would have wasted a lot of German resources and time. So Germany demanded to transport its troops through Belgium. When Belgium ignored the German demands, Germany attacked Belgium on the night of August 3rd, and this angered Britain. Because Belgium was a neutral country, Britain declared war on Germany on August 4th for disturbing the peace of a neutral country. Throughout the month of August, various powerful countries in Europe and the world declared war on each other. The period was something like this. July 28th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. July 31st, Germany issues an ultimatum to Russia to stop preparations for war, to France. August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. August 2nd, German troops on the threshold of Luxembourg and Belgium. August 3rd, Germany invades neutral Belgium. August 4th, Britain declares war on Germany. August 5th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Russia. August 6th, Serbia declares war on Germany. August 7th, Serbia's neighbor, Montenegro, declares war on Austria-Hungary. August 12th, Montenegro declares war on Germany. August 10th and 12th, France and Britain declare war on Austria-Hungary. August 23rd, Japan declares war on Germany. August 25th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Japan. On August 28th, Austria-Hungary declared war on Belgium. All in all, the political situation of the whole world became incredibly chaotic. Before the war, there were two powers in Europe, the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. But when the war started, the whole world was divided into two parts. The Central Powers were Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. On the other hand, the Allied powers were Russia, the British Empire, France, Italy, America, Japan, Romania, Serbia, Belgium, Greece, Portugal, and Montenegro. Although many countries in between entered the war in the middle or end of the war. In any case, the entry of the British Empire into the war was very bad news for Germany, and even worse news was Russia. Yes, Russia quickly prepared for war, ruining all the calculations of Germany's pre-plan. Then, in a hurry, Germany requested Austria-Hungary to hold back the Russians, but Austria-Hungary failed completely. As a result, Germany was forced to send a large number of troops back to the Russian border. Thus, the war was divided into two fronts.
Russia on the Eastern Front, and France and Britain on the Western Front. That is, the Schlieffen Plan had failed by then. But surprisingly, the German forces repelled the Russians with incredible skill in the Battle of Tottenberg. Not only did they repel, but they almost annihilated the Russian Second Army between August 23rd and 30. The Russians were so unprepared that they did not even encrypt their radio communications. As a result, 30,000 Russian soldiers died against 13,000 German soldiers, and 92,000 were captured. The Germans continued to advance simultaneously on the Western Front, preventing the Russians. Not only that, but by September 6th, they were within 30 kilometers of Paris. If the Germans had actually captured Paris, then perhaps the history of the world would have been different. But with his back against the wall, the military governor of Paris, General J.S. Galliani, was able to order the French commander-in-chief, Joseph Joffre, to attack with great difficulty. A terrible battle took place from September 6th to 12th. That battle is known as the First Battle of the Marne. In this one battle, about 250,000 French soldiers and 300,000 German soldiers were wounded. 15,000 British, 80,000 French, and a similar number of German soldiers died. Finally, Germany was forced to retreat under the joint French-British attack. Then the war continued to the sea, which was called the Race to the Sea. Then the trench warfare began across the entire 350-mile area from the sea to Switzerland. Although the war had been limited to Europe until now the war began to spread throughout the world. Australia came to the side of the Allies and occupied German New Guinea at the first opportunity. Japan did the same. The German colonies in Africa were attacked. Meanwhile, on October 31st, 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered the war on the side of the Central Powers. As a result, France and Britain declared war on each other on November 5th. Meanwhile, fierce fighting between the Ottoman Empire and Russia continued throughout November and December in the Caucasus region. But there was no gain except for heavy losses. But the British had their eyes on the Ottoman oil fields from the very beginning. So on April 25, 1915, the Allied forces began the Gallipoli campaign. Their goal was to capture the Ottoman capital, Constantinople. But after about 200,000 soldiers were killed and wounded in this 9-month campaign, the Allied forces broke off the war. Meanwhile, on May 7th, an important event occurred. A special ship called Lusitania was sunk by a German U-boat attack, with about 1,200 civilians on board, and 128 of the passengers were Americans. As a result, American public opinion completely turned against Germany. On the 23rd of the same month, Italy joined the war, but they were part of the Triple Alliance. That is, Italy was supposed to fight as a middle power, but they betrayed and joined the Allied forces and attacked the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Of course, it did not help. That is, you can understand that even though the war spread all over the world, the outcome of the war was the same, just a regional one. In October 1915, by luring Serbia's neighbor Bulgaria, the Central Powers, and finally the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Bulgaria, took over Serbia. The year was 1916. The World War was at its peak. In the meantime, Portugal seized a German ship anchored in Lipson Harbor. As a result, on March 16th, Germany also declared war on Portugal. But Germany's economic situation was very difficult due to the naval blockade that began early in the war. So on June 31, 1916, the German and British navies faced each other in full force for the first time, the results of which were very terrible. About 250 ships participated in the famous naval battle of the Battle of Jutland. In just 2 days of fighting, 14 British ships with 6,000 sailors were destroyed. On the other hand, the German Navy was exhausted after losing 11 ships with 2,500 men. But the bloodthirstiness of the empires was not over yet. From February 21, 1916 to December 18, 1916, the longest battle of the First World War took place in Tarn, France. During this time, 400,000 French and 350,000 German soldiers were wounded. About 300,000 people died on both sides. On the other hand, the British tried their best to suppress the Germans. On July 1, 1916, 57,000 British soldiers were killed in just one day at the Battle of the Somme, and tanks were used for the first time in the same war. While such a bloody war was going on the Western Front, Russia was only retreating on the Eastern Front. But after seeing the British attack at the Battle of Somme, the Russians also launched a counterattack, which is still known as the Brusilov Offensive. But they could not do much to the Germans because they ran out of supplies. Seeing the Russians advancing like this, the Romanians also joined the fight. But after the Russians stopped, the Romanians were destined for a brutal defeat.
On the other hand, there was an internal conflict in Greece at that time. The king of Greece wanted to join the Central Powers, but the king retreated after not being able to reach an agreement with the prime minister, and Greece joined the Allied powers. But although the Allied powers could not do much good in Europe, the situation of the Ottoman Empire was getting worse day by day. The Ottomans were retreating day by day due to the Russian attack. At the same time, the British continued to advance through the Mesopotamian region. But the biggest game here was played by a British officer known as Lawrence of Arabia. It was mainly at his instigation that the Arab tribes declared war on the Ottoman Empire. But still, the war in Europe was stuck in a deadlock. In the meantime, the Russian Revolution took place in 1917. The Bolshevik Party came to power, and their first task upon arrival was to make an agreement with Germany and remove Russia from the war. And this was huge good news for the Germans. But the United States of America was peaking out as bad news. Honestly, America was the only one who benefited from this whole war, because the Allies had a large amount of supplies and their economy was strong. Military preparations were also complete. And here, Germany made a fatal mistake. To keep America busy, they sent a secret telegram to the German embassy in Mexico, which is known as the Zimmermann telegram. Germany's goal was to attack America through Mexico, but the British decoded this telegram, and after that, America got involved in the war. Germany was terrified by the arrival of new American troops. Germany jumped in with all its might for the last time. The Allied forces retreated to a total of 4 places along the line of control. But Britain and France stopped the Germans in the 5th blow. And then America came, and everyone knows the history that followed. The Central Powers started losing on every front. First, Bulgaria admitted defeat, then the Ottoman Empire, then Austria-Hungary, and finally, on November 11, 1918, Germany surrendered. And with this, the First World War ended. We have another video coming soon about World War II. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you have any new topic suggestions, let us know too. See you in the next video.